Good day everyone. We are Group 5 from BEd 2, Section 2, and we are here to report Chapter 5, which is all about distinguishing and constructing various paper and pencil tests. So this chapter focuses on developing paper and pencil tests for assessing the attainment of educational objectives based on Bloom's taxonomy. Paper and pencil tests can either be selected response or constructed response types. Selected response types include true or false item, multiple choice type items, and matching type, while the constructed response type of test includes enumeration, completion, and essays. So, lesson 1 is all about planning a test and construction of table of specification or the TOS. So, there are 5 important steps in planning for a test. The first step is identifying test objectives or the lesson outcomes. The second step is deciding on the type of objective test to be prepared. The third step is preparing a table of specification or the TOS. The fourth step is constructing the draft test items. And the fifth step is tryout and validation. So the first step is identifying test objectives. So if a test objective is comprehensive, then it must cover the various levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So each objective consists of a statement of what is to be achieved preferably by the students. For example, the topic is all about subject-verb agreement in English for grade 5 class. So if we are about to construct a test on this topic, the following are the typical objectives. So for knowledge or remembering, the objective is that the students must be able to identify the subject and the verb in a given sentence. For comprehension or understanding, the objective is that the students must be able to determine the appropriate form of a verb to be used given the subject of a sentence. For application or applying, the students must be able to write sentences observing rules on subject-verb agreement. For analysis or analyzing, the students must be able to break down a given sentence into its subject and predicate. For evaluation or evaluating, the students must be able to evaluate whether or not a given sentence observes rules on subject-verb agreement. And for synthesis or creating, the students must be able to formulate the rules to be followed regarding subject-verb agreement. So let's come to the second step, which is deciding on the type of objective test to be prepared. So the test objectives guide the kind of objective test that will be designed and constructed by the teacher. So it is the teacher who is the one who designed and construct the objective test. So this means that the test and the lesson objective or the outcome must be aligned to each other. So for instance, for the first 4 levels, we may construct a multiple choice type of test, while for application and judgment, we may give an essay test or a modified essay test. So at all the time, the test to be formulated must be aligned with the learning outcome. So this shows the principle of constructive alignment. The third step is preparing a table of specification or the TOS. So let us first define what is a table of specification or a TOS. So a TOS is a test map that guides the teacher in constructing a test. The TOS ensures that there is a balance between items that test lower level thinking skills and those test higher ordered thinking skills in the test. So the simplest TOS consists of 4 columns. The first column is the level of objective to be tested. The second column is the statement of objective. The third column is the item numbers where such an objective is being tested. And the fourth column is the number of items and percentage out of the total for that particular objective. Table of specifications is used to help teachers frame decision-making process of test construction and improve validity of teachers' evaluation based on tests constructed for classroom use. Here's an example of table of specifications or the TOS. So the topic here is again subject-verb agreement in English for a grade 5 class. So for recalling level, the objective is that the students must be able to identify the subject and the verb in a given sentence. So the item numbers where such the objective is being tested are numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, with a total of 5 number of items and a percentage of 14.29%. So the overall number of items for that particular test is 35, and that equals to 100%. Let's move on to the fourth step, which is constructing the test items. So the actual construction of the test items follows the TOS. The TOS is very important because it serves as the guide for the teacher in constructing the different test items. So as a general rule, it is advised that the actual number of items to be constructed in the job should be double the desired number of items. For instance, if there are 5 recall level items to be included in the final test form, then at least 10 recall level items should be included in the draft. The subsequent test tryout and item analysis will most likely eliminate many of the constructed items in the draft. Either they are too difficult, too easy, or non-discriminatory. Hence, it will be necessary to construct more items than will actually be included in the final test form. So the fifth and last step for planning for a test is the item analysis and tryout. So the test job is tried out to a group of pupils or students. So the purpose of this tryout is to determine the item characteristic through item analysis and characteristics of the test itself, particularly on its validity, reliability, and practicality. So item analysis and tryout is a process which examines students' responses to individual test items or questions in order to assess the quality of those items and of the test as a whole.
For my part, I will discuss the topic under Lesson 2, which is constructing selected response type. Under this lesson, I will discuss the following: 2.1 General Guidelines in Writing Test Items, 2.2 Criteria for Preparing Test Directions, 2.3 True or False Test, and last is 2.4 Multiple Choice Test. 2.1 General Guidelines in Writing Test Items. In writing test items, there are basic guidelines or rules that you should know. First, avoid writing that ambiguous and confusing. It should be clear and direct. Second, use appropriate vocabulary and sentence structure. Third, keep questions short and to the point. Fourth, write items that have one correct answer. Fifth, do not provide clues to the answer. 2.2 Criteria for Preparing Test Directions. Test directions are very important in any written test, as the inability of the test taker to understand them affects the validity of a test. In preparing test directions, it should be complete, clear, and concise to make them understand. It should also contain instructions on guessing so that the students must be made aware of what is expected from them. Also, the method of answering has to keep simple as possible. There are criteria we should keep in mind when writing directions for a test. First, assume that both the examinees and examiner know nothing at all about the objective or purpose of the test. Second, when writing directions, always use clear, concise, and succinct style. Be as explicit as possible, but avoid lengthy explanations. Third, emphasize more important directions and important activities. When emphasizing, use underline, italics, or different type of sizes or style. Fourth, field or pretest the directions using a sample of both examinees and examiners to identify possible misunderstandings and inconsistencies and gather suggestions for improvement. Fifth, keep the directions for the different forms, subsections, or booklets as consistent or uniform as possible. Sixth, if necessary or helpful, provide practice items before each regular section. This is especially important when evaluating young children or those unfamiliar with objective tests or separate answer sheets. 2.3 True or False Test. Alternative response tests are tests with only two choices or options, such as true or false, right or wrong, yes or no, good or better, check or cross out, and so on. A student who knows how to critique the content of the test will have a 50% chance of getting the correct answer by sheer guesswork. Although correction exists for the prediction formula, it is best for the teacher to ensure that a true or false item is able to discriminate properly between those who know and those who only predicting. A modified true or false test can offset the effect of guessing by requiring students to explain their answer and to disregard a correct answer if the explanation is incorrect. Here are some guidelines for constructing alternative response tests. First, do not give a hint inadvertently in the body of the question. Second, avoid using the words always, never, often, and other words that tend to be either always true or always false. Third, avoid long sentences as these tend to be true. Keep sentences short. Fourth, avoid trick statements with some minor misleading word or spelling anomaly, misplaced phrases, or etc. Fifth, avoid quoting verbatim from reference materials or textbooks. Sixth, avoid specific determiners or giveaway qualifiers. 7. With true or false questions. Avoid grossly disproportionate number of either true or false statements or even patterns in the occurrence of true or false statements. Number 8. Avoid double negatives. Last is 2.4 multiple choice test. The multiple choice type of test offers the student with more than two options per item to choose from. Each item in a multiple choice test consists of two parts, A the STEM, B the options. In the set of options, there is a correct or best option, while all the others are considered distractors. The distractors are chosen in such a way that they are attractive to those who do not know the answer or who are guessing, but at the same time have no appeal to those who actually know the answer. It is this feature of multiple choice type test that allows the teacher to test higher order thinking skills even if the options are clearly stated.
A pleasant day to each and everyone. I am Karen Dihito and I am going to discuss about the guidelines for constructing multiple choice items and matching type of test. Number 1. Do not use unfamiliar words, terms, and phrases.
The ability of the item to discriminate or its level of difficulty should stem from the subject matter than from the wording of the question. For example, what would be the system reliability of a computer system whose slave and peripherals are connected in parallel circuits and each one has a known time to failure probability of 0.05? A student completely unfamiliar with the term slave and peripherals may not be able to answer correctly even if he knows the subject matter reliability.
Number 2. Do not use modifiers that are vague and whose meaning can differ from one person to the next, such as much, often, usually, etc.
Example: the qualifier much is vague and could have been replaced by more specific qualifiers like 90% of the photosynthesis process or some similar phrase that would be more precise. Be quantitative.
Number 3. Avoid complex or awkward word agreements. Also avoid use of negatives in the STEM as they may add unnecessary comprehension difficulties. Number 5. Each item's theme should be as short as possible. Otherwise, you risk testing more for reading and comprehension skills. Number 6. The structure should be equally plausible and attractive.
For example, if these structures had all been Filipino authors, the value of the item would be greatly increased. In this particular instance, only the first three carry the burden of the entire item, since the last can be essentially disregarded by the students.
7. All multiple choice options should be grammatically consistent with this theme.
Option A, B, and C are obviously wrong for the language mark because when added to this theme, the sentence is grammatically wrong. D is the only option which, when connected to this theme, retains the grammatical accuracy of the sentence. Thus, obviously, is the correct answer.
Number 8. The length, explicitness, or degree of technicality of alternatives should not be the determinants of the correctness of the answer. 9. Avoid themes that reveal the answer to another item. Number 10. Avoid alternatives that are synonyms with others or those that include or overlap others.
The option A and D are essentially the same. Thus, a student who spots these identical choices would right away narrow down the field of choices to A, B, and C. The last distractor would play no significant role in the increasing in the value of the item.
11. Avoid presenting sequenced items in the same order as in the text. Next, avoid use of assumed qualifiers that many examinees may not be aware of. Avoid use of unnecessary words or phrases which are not relevant to the problem at hand, unless such discriminating ability is the primary intent of the evaluation. Avoid use of non-relevant sources of difficulty such as requiring a complex calculation when only knowledge of a principle is being tested. 15. Pack the question in this theme.
Here is an example of a question which has no question. Avoid it by all means.
Use of none of the above option only when the decayed answer is totally correct. When choice of the best response is intended, none of the above is not appropriate, since the implication has already been made that the correct response may be partially inaccurate. Note that use of all of the above may allow credit for partial knowledge. In a multiple option item, allowing only one option choice, if a student only knew that two options were correct, he could then deduce the correctness of all of the above. This assumes you are allowed only one correct choice. 18. Better still use none of the above and all of the above sparingly, but not to use them at all. 19. Having compound response choices may purposefully increase difficulty of an item. Match homogeneous, not heterogeneous items. This theme, longer in construction than the options, must be in the first column, while the options, usually shorter, must be in the second column. The option must be more in number than these themes, to prevent the student from arriving at the answer by mere process of elimination. To help the examinee find the answer easier, arrange the options alphabetically or chronologically, whichever is applicable. Like any other test, the directions of the test must be given. The examinees must know exactly what to do.
For the completion type of test, it is, however, possible to construct supply type of test that will test higher order thinking skills. For example, write an appropriate synonym for each of the following. Each blank corresponds to a letter. The appropriate synonym for the first is change, with 6 letters, while the appropriate synonym for the second is grow, with 4 letters. Notice that these questions require not only mere recall of words, but also understanding of these words. Here is another example of a completion type of test that measures higher order thinking skills. Write G if the item on the left is greater than the item on the right. L if the item on the left is less than the item on the right. E if the item on the left equals to the item on the right. and D if the relationship cannot be determined. For number 1, the answer is G because the square root of 9, which is 3, is greater than negative 3. For number 2, the answer is G because the square root of 25 is 625 and is greater than 615. For number 3, the answer is L because 3 meters converted to inches is equal to 118.11 inches. 36 inches is less than 118 inches. For number 4, the answer is A because 4 feet in inches is equal to 48 inches. For the last number, the answer is L because 1 kilogram is 2.2 times heavier than a pound. There are 5 guidelines for the formulation of completion type of test. Number 1. Avoid over-mutilated sentences like this test item. The blank is produced by the blank is used by the green blank to change the blank and blank into. This process is called blank. Give enough clue to the student. Number 2. Avoid open-ended item. There should be only one acceptable answer. The item is open-ended, hence not a good test item. Number 3. The blank should be at the end or near the end of the sentence. The question must first be asked before the answer is expected. Like the matching type of test, the stem where the question is packed must be in the first column. Number 4. Ask for questions on more significant item, not on trivial matter. On the given example, there are other more significant items to ask other than specific birth dates. Number 5. The length of the blanks must suggest the answer. Make the blanks uniform in size. Essays are classified as non-objective tests that allow for the assessment of higher order thinking skills. Such tests require students to organize their thoughts on a subject matter in coherent sentences in order to inform an audience. In essay test, students are required to write one or more paragraphs on a specific topic. Here are essay questions that can be used to measure attainment of a variety of objectives. Number 1. Comparing. Describe the similarities and differences between. Compare the following methods for. Number 2. Relating cause and effect. What are the major causes of? What would be the most likely effects of? Number 3. Justifying. Which of the following alternatives would you favor and why? Explain why you agree or disagree with the following statement. Number 4. Summarizing. State the points included in. Briefly summarize the contents of. Number 5. Generalizing. Formulate several valid generalizations from the following data. State a set of principles that can explain the following events. Number 6. Inferring. In the light of the facts presented, what is most likely to happen when? How would Senator X be most likely to react to the bomb explosion after the bar examination last September? Number 7. Classifying. Group the following items according to. What do the following items have in common? Number 8. Applying. Using the principles of blank as a guide, describe how you would solve the following problem situation. Describe a situation that illustrates the principle of blank. Number 9. Analyzing. Describe the reasoning errors in the following paragraphs. List and describe the main characteristics of. Number 10. Evaluating. Describe the strengths and weaknesses of the following. Using the criteria developed in class, write an evaluation of. Number 11. Creating. Make up a story describing what would happen if. Describe a plan, prove that. Write a well-organized report that shows. There are two types of essay, the restricted essay and non-restricted or extended essay. In restricted essay, it also referred to as short focused response. Examples are asking students to write an example, list 3 reasons, or compare and contrast 2 techniques. For non-restricted or extended essay, extended responses can be much longer and complex than short responses, but Students are encouraged to remain focused and organized.
Guidelines for the formulation and scoring of essay test. Number 1, phrase the directions in such a way that students are guided on the key concepts to be included. Specify how the students should respond. Number 2, inform the students on the criteria to be used for grading their essay. This rule allows the students to focus on relevant and substantive materials rather than on peripheral and unnecessary facts and bits of information. Number 3, put a time limit on the essay test. Number 4, decide on your essay grading system prior to getting the essays of the students. Number 5, evaluate all of the students' answers to one question before proceeding to the next question. Number 6, evaluate answers to essay questions without knowing the identity of the writer. 7, whenever possible, have 2 or more persons grade each answer. Number 8, do not provide optional questions. Number 9, provide information about the value or weight of the questions and how it will be scored. Number 10, emphasize higher order thinking skills. An alternative response test is made up of items, each of which admit only 2 possible responses. Alternative response questions are a special form of multiple choice questions, where the learner has to choose between just 2 items, also known as true or false test. A multiple choice item consists of a stem, options, and auxiliary information. The stem contains context, content, and/or the question the student is required to answer. The options include a set of alternative answers with one correct option and one or more incorrect options or distractors. Completion items are a type of short answer question. In completion items, learners are required to insert a word or words to complete a sentence or a series of sentences. While completion items may be used to assess different types of skills and knowledge, they are generally used to test basic knowledge.